All right. I think we are live now. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this first streaming of 2023. Okay. If this is your first time joining my live stream, I tend to go over about 1 to 2 important COVID research paper in the streaming and give a quick update. But today I'm going to go over a recent preprint study from the Cleveland Clinic. And I know I'm not the first one here on YouTube talking about this topic, and some of the friends here wanted me a little bit. Okay, some video were deleted. Okay, on this topic, so I try to be very careful and adhere to the YouTube guideline. Hopefully. All right. Now, when I talk about preprints, I usually very carefully choose what they are, where they come from, because technically they are not officially considered as evidence yet. So let's be clear with that. But this preprint, okay, let me show the screen here. All right. So this is the preprint we're looking at. The title says Effectiveness of Coronavirus Disease 2019 COVID-19 Bivalent Vaccine. So it's a very brief title. This preprint comes from the Cleveland Clinic. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Cleveland Clinic or Ohio or not from the US, this is a huge nonprofit academic medical center network, okay? One of the nation's best hospitals network. So they also pioneered many new procedures and things in cardiologies and etc. So a very prestige place, and their research team, physicians, scientists, written, did this research and deposited their finding in this preprint. All right, so enough for such a long introduction. Now, I know some of you may be in a rush, so let me first give a key summary of this study. This is a very large retrospective cohort study that looked at over 51,000 employees that were employed by Cleveland Clinic Network. And of those employees, a little bit over 10,000 of them got their bivalent booster, and then they look at their infection record, okay, for about 13 weeks durations, okay. Now they asked one very simple question. It's just how effective were these bivalent vaccines in stopping COVID-19? Now they did do a count on how many got the Pfizer bivalent versus how many got the Moderna bivalent, but in their analysis, they just lumped together in one efficacy finding. So 89% of the vaccinated, okay, that means 9,000, about 9,595 of them were vaccinated with the Pfizer bivalent, and then the remaining got the Moderna bivalent. And by 13th week of the study, 5%, okay, 5%, here I highlighted, of the employee acquired COVID-19 during the 13 weeks of the study. So that is their major finding. And they did, some very complicated analysis, which is, a lot of statistical involvement. I won't go into the detail here. And frankly, those analyses are somewhat beyond my expertise as well. But they did multiple analysis, multiple different ways to look at the data. And they reported that the bivalent COVID-19 vaccine booster was about 30%, overall 30% effective in preventing infection. So it was modest at best when the BA.4/5 vaccine matched the circulating variant at the time. So that's here's a highlight of the text here. Now, just a reminder, all these articles are, the link is in the descriptions if you need to get to read them themselves. All right, so the effectiveness in preventing infection, again, it's a little bit disappointing, okay, but not surprising. The a little bit implication is that now that the BA.4/5 are becoming less dominant, particularly in the northeast region of the US. And in fact, you've probably heard about it. The major dominating variant in the northeast is the XBB.1.5, which I'm sure at some point I'll cover that in a summary in somewhere in the future. But that's not the focus today. So if the matching is not so well, it is likely that 30% effectiveness found in this study is no longer applicable in the real world. So just keep that in mind. All right, so that's the short message of this article. Now, there's a hidden message from this article that was unexpected, even in the author's own word. So if you can stay longer, now I'm going to dive deeper into other important findings in this study. So this study also reported a very alarming or disturbing message. Here I highlighted. In their own word, is that the risk of COVID-19 also varied by the number of COVID-19 vaccine doses previously received. The higher the number of the vaccine previously received, the higher the risk of contracting COVID-19. Now, this is what it means is that, well, the more you have it, the higher the chance, the higher the risk to get infected or contracting the disease. That is very disturbing. Now, so let's take a closer look of what what the graph that they show us. Okay. Now, this first graph basically look at the risk of COVID-19 based on prior infections. So it makes sense that if someone today still has not been infected or no known infection, the risk for new COVID-19 infection is highest. Okay, so this is the black line, and it goes down. Okay, the more recent of the infections, those that got like the BA.4, 5 infections, have the lowest risk to get infected again. So it totally makes sense in terms of the immunity that is conferred by the prior infection. But here is the second figure that is most unexpected result, in my opinion. So we're looking at the second figure. This shows the higher the number of the vaccine previously received, the higher the risk of contracting COVID-19. So more than 3 doses have higher chance than 3 doses, higher than 2 doses, 1 doses, and 0 dose. So this is one of the message that, it's very unexpected, even in their own word. Now, to make sure that finding were precise, they use different multivariable analysis, and they also see the same thing. The greater the number of the vaccine doses previously received, the higher the risk of COVID-19. So, what could be the reason for the weaker than expected vaccine effectiveness, right? So we all want to know, no matter if you have the bivalent vaccine or planning to have a bivalent vaccine, or know someone have it, like my father. He had it early December. He had the bivalent Pfizer, and about 2 weeks later, if you watch my previous stream on the 15th, I think, of December, I reported my dad got infected. Now, luckily, he recovered very quickly, so far without complications. So thankfully, and my mom got it the next day too. So everyone got it basically, but everyone recovered. So if you if you care to know their progress, but outside that, so why there seems to be a weaker than expected vaccine effectiveness? The author point out several things. First is that there are a substantial amount of people who had contracted some form of Omicron variant. Okay, about 1/3 of them even have asymptomatic. I could be in that case. Okay, I could be in the asymptomatic case of Omicron infections, and that could have masked the immunity from the bivalent vaccine. Okay, so even the CDC in early of 2022, estimated that about 64% of adult 18 to 64 and about 75% of the children and adolescents had antibody evidence of prior COVID infection. So it is pretty safe to say that everybody, okay, have some form of immunity against the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. Okay, now the author also explicitly say that with such a large proportion of people expected to have been previously exposed to Omicron variant, so many people have exposed it already. It is concerning. Okay, they choose word very carefully here. It is concerning that a substantial number of people may not be benefited from a bivalent vaccine. So they didn't say that it is useless. It is very concerning what is the true effectiveness or true effect or true benefit of the bivalent vaccine. Now, just to be fair for the discussion, that the CDC, continues to emphasize that, or a lot of the data, not just the CDC, emphasize that the vaccines are holding up against hospitalizations and death, and they're improving the outcomes. That is not what this paper is looking at. This paper is looking at the most fundamental things that, well, the talk is we need to get the bivalent, we need to suppress the wave, prevent the winter surge. But this paper is hinting that could not, maybe a little bit more questionable goal here. All right. All right. So now the next question that it's concerning is that why the greater number of vaccine doses is associated with increased COVID-19 risk. So they also speculated a little bit, okay, just in their own word, that, well, there could be increased of risk of COVID-19 with higher doses just because these people are more likely to, they're more likely to get the vaccine, because they were more susceptible to COVID-19, meaning that, well, they could be more vulnerable, they could be immunocompromised or having multiple disease, so they are more likely to get the dose. Despite that, they're still more likely to get COVID-19. So that is a simple explanation. The author very carefully rejected or dismissed this simple explanation because notice what do they study? Okay, they are employees of the Cleveland Clinic. Okay, they say that it is a generally younger population, individuals, and those who choose to take, who have less than 3 doses, is they choose not to follow CDC's prior recommendations. Okay, so and they are also more likely to engage in activities that expose them to COVID-19 infection. So in theory, you would think that, okay, these people would probably get more infected, right? Less dose. That's the traditional immunological thinking. The traditional thinking for vaccines: the more booster you get, the more immunity it confer, the less of a chance to get infected. But that's not the case. That's not what they find. The graph that I show you, they actually had lowered the risk. So which is quite unexpected. All right. So the authors, they've come from academic center. They're very careful in their wording again. They try to back up a little bit of their finding. All right. Here, just to conclude their whole paper, there is that they said their finding was not unique. They referenced 2 more paper in the reference 21 and reference 7. If you get a chance to read that afterward, is that a study, okay, also showed that both of studies show that higher risk of reinfection than those who had Omicron variants after previously receiving 2 doses. And so it's a trend. More doses seems to have more infection or reinfection. So now this is a clinical paper, okay, just a retrospective cohort, just looking at numbers. So the authors did not really speculate any particular immunological or physiological reasons or hypothesis for this whole event. They basically say it is important to examine whether multiple doses given over time may not be as beneficial as we generally assumed, or as everyone generally assumed. So this is basically the last concluding sentence there. Now, that's for the talk. That's the talk of the paper. Now, I want to chime in a little bit as what I think about it. This is, based on all the things that I've read, not particularly just focus on this paper here. So, for those of you who followed the channel long enough, I'm a pharmacist, but my main job is academic teaching. I teach pharmacology to pharmacy students. I also teach immunology in the spring semester, which is coming up in 2 weeks. So all these new findings, it really disrupted my traditional thinking of immunology. Like I said earlier, traditional thinking is the more booster, more exposure to a antigen, the higher the immune response. And apparently that is not so much of a case. At least there are some arguments with different papers. And in this clinical paper, it's really telling you the opposite. So what could be immunological reasons? What could be the physiological reasons? I think one of the more obvious, more discussed reasons is something called immune imprinting, right? I have touched upon immune imprinting several times, but just in one sentence to explain immune imprinting is that the first exposure to a particular virus limits the development of immunity against new minor variants. And so far, all of the variants that we have, we still consider them as relatively minor because we still are dealing with the same virus. We're not dealing with a completely different virus. And for more than a year, we've been dealing with Omicron and its subvariants. It basically under the same umbrella this time. So could immune imprinting be involved in that? That's certainly, there's a lot of paper we're talking about it. So here it just, I think I've talked about it a little bit, in previous live streams, and I can also post a link for those. This is not as new. This came out in October. They were doing a lot of the antibody testings, looking at bivalent booster vaccines, and they showed that both show some evidence of immune imprinting, meaning that even though the vaccine were given as bivalent, the body generate more antibodies against the ancestral strain or the Wuhan strain, and less of the antibody against the new BA.4 strain. Okay, so that's the article that had it there. All right, so now from my, I would argue that something could be a little bit not determined well before the rollout of bivalent vaccine, and let's look at why. All right, so here is just a summary table. Now, I generated this table, but you can find all of these information freely online just to compare the doses. Okay, Pfizer original. So original meaning the first dose, second dose. They have 30 micrograms of what? Wuhan spike mRNA. Right. By this time, we're all clear. mRNA is in their vaccine. Moderna had 100 microgram first dose and second dose. Okay. Now, when it goes to the bivalent vaccines, okay, bivalent vaccines, the Pfizer have 15 micrograms of each. So they half of that, half of the Wuhan spike and half of the BA.4/5 spike. And Moderna reduced significantly. Actually, their first monovalent booster was only 50 microgram, and they split that in half, 25 for Wuhan, 25 for the BA.4/5 spike. All right. So now we have to remember that the immune response, okay, to the vaccine is not coming strictly from the mRNA itself. It is from the protein that was encoded by the mRNA. Now, to this day, I am still not aware of any study that, really showing reducing the mRNA by half would reduce the spike protein production by half. I have never seen a paper like that, and I don't think the Pfizer's, the sponsors, what they call it, the manufacturer, ever presented such data to the CDC and Pfizer and and the FDA committees during their meetings. So, I really don't know if, or frankly, I don't know anyone can give me an answer if the spike protein are translated half. Okay, so that has been the questions that I always got asked, from the beginning. Well, how much protein are we getting from these mRNA vaccines? I still to this day I cannot find the answer for to this question. But is it possible that everyone would translate a little bit different? It's possible, right? Look at the reactions. Look at the more common side effects. Fevers, chills, and malaise, fatigue. Okay, common side effects from vaccines. It goes from a spectrum. Some people experiencing very badly, okay, the side effect. I remember my colleagues, my students, when the vaccine first rolled out in 2021, and basically they were telling me, oh, they knocked them out good, like they just like having the disease very similar, and like they had fever, they just couldn't work for a day, but they recover very quickly. Okay, and then there's half of the people saying that did nothing to them. It was like a placebo almost. So like I am one of those that I personally have zero reactions to the mRNA vaccine. I'm very open. I got 3 doses, okay, all Moderna, so which is the higher dose of the spike mRNA, and I had no reactions whatsoever all these times. So I consider myself fortunate. I know a lot of people had bad reactions to it, so I'm not generalizing the reaction here. So that tells us that there is a varying degree of reactions to the vaccine. So, or to the spike that is produced at least. But we don't know the exact amount of spike is being there, unfortunately. So, could that be reasons that is affecting? I don't know. This is unfortunate because a lot of the reasons, of official vaccine decisions, recommendations were based on pretty few evidence, and we are now only seeing on a retrospective study, both from the CDC, from academic research centers, and trying to retrospectively figuring back out how good this vaccine is. So we're under the situation that things have to be that rushed. So, but just a question: at what cost, right? At what cost? I think I will leave that for you to think about it. So that's for today's stream. It's about 20 some minutes there. I mean, let's see if I can have anything, real questions there. But see, a lot of you had some engaging talk there. Yes, the IG4 antibodies is something, another topic that I need to look more into. So, but definitely something to think about. Now, again, just for the YouTube algorithm's sake, this is a preprint study. Okay, this is not. I'm not advising. There's anything wrong about these vaccines. This should not be considered using as a guide to clinical practice. This is an evidence that has not been officially peer reviewed. So purely, this is for YouTube to hear. Now, thanks again for tuning in, and I hope this video got stayed for a little bit longer. So for those of you try to understand what's going on with this Cleveland Clinic study, it's so nice of you, all of you, to be here this evening or afternoon, depending on all of where you are, and I hope to see you again in my regular Sunday videos. All right, so I'm going to have dinner, and you may be having a snack, but take care. Good evening. Bye.